You want to see how we do it in the pros?
Changing your swing is about repetition without repetition. You don't just hit 500 balls with this thing and change your swing. You also don't just hit 500 balls without a thought.
Welcome to Earned Not Given.
Well, I think it's a great segue. You're talking about, the future of golf and the way me and you see it. Big announcements coming the last couple of weeks pertaining to the men's professional scene, obviously, right? John Rahm jumped ship, has his own team. Terrell Hatton joins him officially yesterday. And then there's rumors of apparently the deal between the PGA and the PIF is done. It's supposed to be announced today. This is going to be interesting because, again, me and you have had conversations about this off camera. But as a coach, as this whole thing has changed over the last 2 years, what are your thoughts on it? If you had a player that was making the decision, like, what does it mean to you through this whole thing? It's always been interesting to me. As a fan, the team golf aspect is different, but I've never dealt with somebody who had to, potentially, weigh the options of jumping ship. So what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, maybe when we saw the first announcements at Augusta a couple years ago, it was different, right? Those were the early adopters, the ones that were willing to really be the crazy ones and take that jump. And I think over these past 2 years, we've started to see that it's clear there's going to be a change in golf. And let's be honest, golf needed a change. So I think a year from now, maybe tomorrow, who knows when it's going to be, but I truly believe that the golf industry is going to thank those that were willing to change. Obviously, in the beginning, it's very hard for PGA Tour players, take a Tiger, take a Jack Nicklaus, take someone who created the PGA Tour, right? But if we go back in time, it used to be a different tour, and then they created the PGA Tour. And those that created the PGA Tour obviously were very adamant about keeping the PGA Tour. If we went back in time when it was the PGA of America and you had to be a club pro to compete, and then the likes of Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer created the current PGA Tour, that was different. And now I think what's really intriguing to me is this team aspect. In the beginning, I thought it was shit, if I'm honest, because I didn't really understand it. And then I went and, like everybody else in the world, I watched Drive to Survive and became obsessed with Formula One and was like, oh my God, I get it. I think it's going to be really cool. And for me, Terrell's an amazing guy. And I'm so excited to see his personality pair up with John Rahm. And obviously, it was amazing to see them at the Ryder Cup. And of course, it makes sense, right? What is Legion 13? Who knows? But I think we're all a fan of John Rahm. And when Liv was able to get John Rahm, I think that solidified that this isn't just some dream of Greg Norman. This is actually potentially the future of golf.
Yeah, so, you look at the roster from when it was first, conceived, basically, that first original field for Liv, and then you look at it today. Terrell was 16th in the world. I'm sure he'll stay top 50 for at least another year, even without having the world ranking points. But you look at that field now, and it's really compelling. And I've talked with a lot of my guys that are golf nerds like us, and this week is going to be interesting. You've got Pebble Beach, which is an elevated event this year. You've got a pretty heavy hitter field for the PGA, but I'd be lying to you if I said I'm not really interested in Mayakoba and what Liv is doing there. Like John Rahm, Brooks Koepka, DJ, obviously, who, according to his social media, is looking to make a comeback this year. And there's plenty of other names that I'm not saying, but
Yeah, like the entire team of Torque.
Torque, right? Yeah, right. Think about that, right? Not heavy hitter names on that team, but damn good golfers.
Yeah, as a player that's been amazing throughout his entire career, someone like Joaquin Neiman, right? Or, obviously a little background on me, like I've been blessed to coach a lot of players from Latin America. Like that entire team is superstars. And I'm really impressed that that team bet on each other because they're stronger because they're all good, right? If you look at how strong that team is, it's because they're bonded like brothers. They share fitness coaches, they share swing coaches, they share chefs. They are truly a team, and that's awesome. So I do agree with you. This week, are we going to be watching Mayakoba? Are we going to be watching Pebble Beach? I can tell you my house is going to look a little bit like probably everybody's house that first week in April when you have multiple screens going and you're trying to watch it all at once. Because now you don't have to wonder, are these guys going to play in the majors? The best players on both tours are going to play against each other 4 times a year. Yeah. And that was probably the sad part for me when there was this de facto tour that was started. You wondered, are you going to see those guys? But we get to see Brooks, DJ, John Rahm for infancy in major championships. And now their tour, I believe, is soon to be probably the tour, right? Or there's going to be some sort of blend, and that's exciting. I have no idea what it looks like, and seems like Jay and Yasser are trying to figure it out, but I think ultimately there's enough strong personalities both in LIV and in the PGA Tour that ultimately they know they want to play against the best in the world, and it's going to be exciting. What does that look like? Is there this, instead of just elevated events, is there going to be this world tour where the best 30, 40 players compete, and instead of 4 times a year, we're now seeing them 14 times a year? That could be amazing. I do wonder, like for me, right, as I coach a lot of these up-and-coming players trying to make it through the smaller tours to get to the bigger tours, there's no question that there's an elephant in the room. Like, what happens to that 150th player? What happens to the kid that worked his whole life to get his PGA Tour card? Now, is it really the same as it was 3 years ago? There's no way. No. There's no way that, amazing for Nick Dunlop, right? And we should probably do an entire podcast on how ridiculous it is what that kid did. Yeah. And it's amazing that he now has his PGA Tour card. What's probably even more amazing is he just took a shortcut to this next tour. But what about the next kid, right? What about the kid that comes out of college, goes through PGA Tour U, has that opportunity? How long does it take him to get to compete against the Brooks, the DJs, the Rorys? What does that trajectory look like, and how are we going to be able to see not just the best in the world right now, but we want to see the up-and-comers, right? Yeah. I'm super excited to see Caleb Surratt play. I think it's awesome. I'm super excited to see Nick Dunlop play. Unfortunately, they're not playing against each other. But sounds like maybe by this afternoon, we might have to redo this podcast and say we get to see all these guys together in an event.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that we're going to have to figure out for golf as a whole is what are the pathways to the premier tours now? Because before today, there were 2 very clear pathways for the PGA Tour, and then for LIV, they have their invitational series, right? We're going to have to figure that out because the game cannot continue to go if we're not creating new stars.
Yeah, I think this week actually was amazing, right? Like, the Farmers was awesome. And to see Matteo Pavan win is amazing, right? And obviously he hits it in the left rough, and it looks like, hey, oh my goodness, maybe Nikolai Horgaard has a chance to 2-putt to force a playoff. We're golf nerds, so we love that. Right. How many people actually knew Matteo Pavan, or that, this is the first time a Frenchman has won since 1907 or whatever? Like, it's wild. But those stories are great, and hopefully, I don't want us to be, a podcast that talks about, television production, But if TV would do a better job explaining these stories, it doesn't matter if you're watching the Challenge Tour, you're watching DP Tour, you're watching Korn Ferry, you're watching PGA Tour, you're watching Live, you're watching this future tour that's probably going to be announced today. It doesn't matter. Like, I just want to see the best players.
Hello? Hey.
You filming something?
Yeah.
I see the garbage.
Yeah, go ahead. You're good.
Yeah, guys, take a quick chance to look at our man. He's changing the garbage. This is what we do. This is what we do, guys. I told you guys, this isn't high production. We got our man here coming in changing the garbage. Yeah, shit gets real here on the Earned Not Given podcast.
Note to self for episode 2, maybe we just make a filming sign and put on the door.
The best part, guys, I mean, maybe hopefully we cut this, but the guy came in to change the garbage and he didn't take shit away. So I don't really know what just happened, but that's great. Yeah, I think, well, we'll cut back in here. So for me, the ultimate goal is that the golf fan benefits from what's going on. And I think that's what's happened. I don't care to pontificate about should we have fractured away, shouldn't they have fractured away, should it be PGA Tour, shouldn't it be PGA Tour. But as a golf fan, you can have an opinion on Rory. But I think we saw that there was a lot of things behind the scenes, right? Rory really struggled at the Masters this year and then chose not to play in Hilton Head. And there's a reason. And it's because I think he wanted to feel like he could influence. And then as soon as, well, as a golfer, right? You can only focus on the things that you can control. But the players that really struggle are the ones that are focusing on things they can't control. Score, fans, weather, right? Rory was trying to influence when there was things bigger than him. And now I think it's exciting to see that these guys are just going to play golf. And we're going to create events where the best players get to play against the best players. And hopefully for all of us, we get to learn more about the Matteo Pavons. Or, you know, what does it look like 2 years ago? And now, like, Ludwig Aubert is, like, ridiculous, right? And he had this trajectory. I just hope whatever happens, every player has the opportunity to use the structure in place, call it PGA Tour U, to become a household name because they step up in the moment. That's what I'm a little bit concerned about. Obviously, there is a huge divide in golf between those top players and those bottom players in terms of who likes them, how much money they make off the golf course. But there is not that big of a divide between their skill and the best players in the world. When you look at what Nick was able to do and how he was able to do that as an amateur, it just shows the strength of the college game and it shows how good these kids are going to be. So whoever it is, I don't really think that Jay Monahan or Yasser are going to be the ones, but hopefully these custodians of the game, whether it's Tiger or Rory or Brooks or whoever, Phil, like whoever these guys are that are going to take care of the game, I think that their heart's in the right place to take care of the next generation.
Yeah. I think, you know, when you talk about this whole situation, right, and we can actually move on from this after this, but you talk about someone who's kept the same thought process throughout the whole thing, and it's Phil. Phil has stood on his word since the beginning, even through when everything came out and, you know, there was a couple hit pieces written on Phil and, you know, personal life stuff, right? But he's never changed and never wavered from what he was wanting to do and what he thought the future of golf looked like.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, 2023 was an amazing year for me, right? I got to coach in 2 majors and I got to be around a lot of these guys. And by coincidence, it just so happened that we played a lot of practice rounds with Brooks. We played a lot of practice rounds with Phil. We played a lot of practice rounds with Bryson. We played with John Rahm. It's pretty crazy to think that all these guys had the same message to my player, which was keep doing what you're doing, keep believing in yourself. Obviously, at the time when we played the Open, 150 to St. Andrews, right? Playing with Bryson and Phil and John, every one of them was just saying how excited they were to be at St. Andrews. It didn't matter, live, PGA Tour, whatever. But what was cool to hear from Bryson and from Phil was this wasn't about the money. It was about an opportunity to give the players the opportunity to have the stage that they want. And I hope that's what it becomes. I know it's about money, and don't kid yourself, right? Like, if I got offered $500 million to never do this podcast again, we would do one episode and you would never see me again, right? So that's fine. But I do also believe that they want to make golf better. And that's kind of all I think we need to talk about when it comes to this. We can come back and we can talk about what actually transpired.
The season's going to evolve. You know, there's going to be more stories that come up, and let's be real. There's going to be more players that jump ship.
Yeah, this is the only sport too, right? Like, I know you're a big hockey guy. You look at hockey, you look at baseball, you look at the NBA. Every one of those organizations at one point, the players took control. Yeah. And I believe this is the moment in golf where the players have taken control and the players have said what's best for us, what's best for the fan, what's best for the game. And there are definitely times where $500 million is what's best for the player. There is definitely times where I'm sure, right, seeing Terrell get on his plane and fly to Mayakoba with his team and everybody from just up the road at Lake Nona, like, that's amazing. Terrell's not a different guy. He just might be a little bit happier because now he feels valued. He feels a part of something bigger than him. And that's the interesting thing about LIV for me, is that golf is a really lonely game. And yes, it's changed over the last 15, 20 years. You go out on tour now and every guy has their own team, right? Physio, fitness guy, nutritionist, coach, putting coach, short game coach, mental coach. There's like 12 guys, right? And the reason why I think a lot of that evolved is because camaraderie is what we all seek. That's why we play. And now this is cool. This is just a new component to say, hey, we're a team. And what does that look like? Who's going to be the next member of Legion 13, or what's going to be the next team? I mean, you're a Ricky guy, right? Is there going to be a OK State team someday? And what's that going to look like, right? In all the conversations I've had with players that are on LIV, every single one of them is extremely happy. And I think those players are going to continue to be happy as they're able to compete more and more with their friends on the PGA Tour. A lot of this divide isn't true. It was just a media kind of trying to make a story about a story. Whereas when I watch the players at those 2, 3, 4 times a year where they're coming from LIV and they're getting to play with the PGA Tour players, it's like they're seeing their friend. It's like when we walked in this morning, it's like, hey, how are you? How are things? What's going on? It's not.
Well, when Brooks won last year, you have Rory congratulating him. I mean, this is in the heat of it, right? Like at the PGA Championship, and every major for the last 2 years has been LIV versus PGA, LIV versus PGA, LIV versus PGA. And then you have a LIV guy win, and Rory, who is supposed to be the guy that's like the vocal front for the PGA, like LIV's bad, goes and congratulates Brooks because they're boys.
Yeah, and also because it was all taken out of context. So I think the cool thing for us is this is evolving. And just like our podcast is called Earn Not Given, this opportunity in golf has been earned.
You want to see how we do it in the pros?
Changing your swing is about repetition without repetition. You don't just hit 500 balls with this thing and change your swing. You also don't just hit 500 balls without a thought.